we do have a few moments. So I would love to open this up just a little bit before we turn to the good news. So does anybody have anything that that really came up as a theme in their group? We won't be able to get to all of them, but it would be good just to hear a little bit. Is anyone open to chatting? What happened in your group?
Cars, and more cars.
Cars. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the things we covered too. And I think the Gorge has got some good infrastructure in place so that we'll be able to, with CAT and the other mass transit, start designing systems where we encourage people to not drive, whether that's through charging or permit process to park, or other things, or just making mass transit that much more accessible.
Great. Thank you.
We talked about Sasquatch shuttle, but the traffic issue is still there. That's one way of alleviating congestion because you have less cars. Other people talked about, we mentioned the idea of possible passes or maybe a Disneyland kind of thing. So you pick your time that you want to go there, and if everybody will respect that, unfortunately or fortunately, there's no gate. So that means you can't let people in and out like a ride. But I think the spirit of cooperation, if people would respect that, it could be a useful tool. And is there a webcam that shows how busy that is there?
Yeah, there is. Yeah. And was it hard to stay with the negatives? Was it hard to not pivot over to solving for the rest of you? Yeah, I'll bet. I'm sorry, Ryan have you had your hand up, Ryan?
Yeah, thanks, Emily. I think a theme that ran throughout a lot of the concerns discussed in our group is the tension between people who live in the communities of the Gorge and the spillover effects, I guess, of visitors. So EMS, infrastructure wear and tear, public safety, can the locals just drive down the road and park, or do they got to get online now and get a permit to go where they're used to go?
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah.
Okay, I can't. Yeah. I want to chime in. Cut somebody off. A couple of things that came up for us that haven't already been mentioned is we were talking about affordable housing for people that live there, and it was interesting some of the things that came up. We talked about the employer's ability to pay and keep employees that can afford to stay there, and then the impact of Airbnb and how that can take away from long-term housing that workers would have available normally, but instead they've been houses have been bought so that they can do short-term rentals for visitors. And then the impact of that, it's a national scenic area, so there's limited housing and we can't keep expanding. And then another interesting component was, we didn't know if the word was the right word, but Zoomers, people that now have transitioned to telework, and so they can get paid Portland rates and live in more rural areas. So that was one thing that came out. Another was, we didn't talk about COVID, but really the message, and I think it's been ingrained in people, is that outside is safer. So I think everybody's just, transitioned to that mindset, and that's where they want to go. And then the other thing that came up was, I think on one of the videos, they were talking about educating, the Venice one, they were talking about educating visitors. And we were saying that the visitation is so high that they can't do education because they're spending all of our time, all the folks that work there are spending all their time doing enforcement and trying to get compliance with just the regular rules and regulations.
Yeah. There's really strong data about the spike in COVID, and we don't know if that's going to continue or if it's going to go back down, but there's certainly outdoors use has gone up dramatically.